Hello and welcome to Cracking the Rich Code, the podcast. I'm your host, John Verico, and with me is the originator of the Cracking the Rich Code book series, Mr. Jim Britt. Jim, how are you today?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. If we're any better, I'd have to be twins to enjoy it.
There you go.
Jim, when I first started taking over hosting this podcast, one of the first things that came to mind was, I wonder if Jim himself has actually been interviewed on his own podcast. And I found that you hadn't. So I said, you know what? There's an opportunity here for the readers of the Cracking the Rich Code book series and the listeners and viewers of the podcast to get to know the guy behind all of this whole effort. So, first of all, Jim, thanks for taking the time. I know you are a crazy busy man, and I really appreciate the fact that you made the time to do this.
Oh, I appreciate you having me.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Well, let's do this. So let's first of all, I mean, not that people don't know, but in a nutshell, who would you say Jim Britt is?
Hmm. Well,
I didn't
it's
say it was
not
going to be easy questions, Jim.
it's not who I planned him to be. From an early age, I mean, I it's interesting. A lot of people plan what their future is going to be, their education to get there and all of that. Well, I dropped out of high school, so I had no education up to 10th grade, about halfway through. And looking back, I wished I'd have dropped out a couple of years sooner. I'd be a couple or ahead. Not that education's bad; it just didn't work for me. I'd rather go to the pool hall and play pool back when I was that age than to go to school, and that's where I made my spending money. But I I grew up in a really poor family and a very loving family, caring. Never heard my mom or dad say anything negative about anybody, and they weren't drinkers, they weren't abusers. They just simple people that got by in life, but barely got by sometimes. And so, I went didn't know what I was going to do. Started pumping gas and didn't know what I'd work there the rest of my life. And then I got invited to my dream job, which was working in a factory on an assembly line, and discovered that really wasn't my dream job. I was wiring telephone switchboards. And if you ever got a wrong number, it was probably my fault back then. But I was pretty good at it. But then I got invited to look at a direct sales company. Didn't know really what I was looking at, and spent an hour, and the lights went on. I said, "I can do this. I'm going to get rich doing it." And that was my first business venture.
Well, what were you
And
what were you selling back then, Jim?
it was cleaning materials, soaps and shampoos, and various things like that. It wasn't Amway, but similar to that. And uh,
When you
they told me
say
to talk to.
when you say direct sales, you're not talking like door to door.
Well, I did some of that too, but more network marketing type. They didn't
Got it.
call it
Okay.
that.
Yep.
They called it direct sales back then.
Hmm.
And I they told me if I talked to 10 people a day, I'd make a lot of money. So I did for a year, and at the end of the year, I'd lost everything I owned. My home, my cars, my furniture, everything had been repoed, except for a few sticks of furniture I owned. And the only thing I got good at selling, I did make one sale that year of 5 gallons of carpet shampoo and with somebody I knew. And the only other things I got good at selling, I sold my pickup, my camper, my boat, my fishing equipment, my guns, everything I held, dear to me. I had to sell to survive. But at the end of the year, I'd lost everything, and I had 15 cents in my pocket, a wife and a child, and a notice on the door from the sheriff saying you got to be out in 5 days.
Ooh.
And but it's interesting when you don't give up on something that you really think you're going to make it. And I stood there for about 15 minutes and said, I'm not going to quit. Not going back to the factory. I'm not going back to pumping gas. I'm not going to quit. 3 hours later, there was a knock on the door from somebody from the company. And they said, can we spend a couple of hours with you? We understand you're a hard worker, but you're not making any money. And he taught me what I was doing wrong, what I needed to be doing. And my business over the next 30 days took off like a rocket. The person that bought the 5 gallons of carpet shampoo from me, I went to deliver another 5 gallons, didn't know if he was going to take it or not. Walked 3 miles in the Oklahoma heat in the middle of the summer to deliver it. And long story short, that ended up in another opportunity that they offered me that paid me 300 a week, starting immediately, of a vehicle, a 3 bedroom furnished apartment, and an opportunity that earned me over $500,000 the next 12 months. And my direct sales business took off, and that earned me just about $500,000 the next 12 months. So I went from 15 cents in my pocket to millionaire in 1 year.
Whoa, that's insane. And what, so tell me, what was this company?
And it was a company called Bestline. They're no longer around. They closed down a couple of years after that. And but what really came out of that business, other than putting me back on my feet financially, was that Jim Rohn was the trainer in that company, and he was unknown outside of there. And we became best of friends, and later we joined up in business. And a couple of years after, they closed up and started kind of a business partnership. And I started promoting him, and that phased me into speaking and coaching. And here I am 45 years later, and over 5,000 events in 31 countries, and a couple million people have attended. And it's kind of unbelievable to me when looking from where I came from. My first 6 years of life, we didn't even have electricity.
Wow.
Um, and I didn't know we didn't have electricity because we never had it. You know, we had an outhouse, we had a well that we drew up with a rope, a bucket, and we had a dipper that we drank out of that bucket. It's probably why I have a strong immune system today, because I probably got every disease back then, and then now I get nothing. So,
That really, is an amazing story. How you literally you are the true rags to riches story here.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't look at myself that way. It is what it is. And I've learned a lot of things along the way, and been able to kind of understand what people go through and what stops them from moving forward, what stops them from accomplishing what they want in life. Um, and most of it's right up here. Um, and
Yeah, it's
the
always in our
fears.
own heads, isn't it? Our
Oh,
the true limiting factors are in our own mindset half the time.
oh, I often say that it's interesting that we make up what we want to accomplish in life. We create a vision for ourselves, and then we turn around and make up a fear that stops us from getting it. And it always amazed me until about 35 years ago when I figured out why people do that. And it's not a few people, it's most people. It's probably 80%.
So why do we do that to ourselves?
Well, I started looking at, you've heard that 80-20 rule.
Mhm.
That one day I'm sitting out by the pool, just relaxing for the day. My wife was traveling someplace and with her girlfriends, and I had a day alone. I just thought, I'm going to sit out here and do nothing, soak up some sun, have a couple beers. And that lasted about 15 minutes. And I started thinking about that 80-20 rule. There was a lot of talk about back then, 35 years ago. And, a lot of salespeople were talking about being a 20 percenter and so on. And I thought, what is wrong with the 80%? I thought, why don't they follow through? I thought, man, if I could figure that out, that's a huge market. So I set out that day to figure it out, and I did. Um, so I thought, okay, humans are humans, but we also have differences.
Right?
And I thought, what makes us different partially is maybe our upbringing. Our parents start teaching us how to walk and how to talk and how to say our numbers and how to swim and how to cross the street, put on our clothes, and so on. And as we repeat those things, we finally perfect them. They become a habit pattern that's second nature to us that we never have to think about again. And we may have hundreds of those, like driving a car. You don't think about how do I drive this thing, every time you get in it. You did it the
Right.
first time, But as you perfected it, there's still a few people out there that hasn't quite perfected it yet. But you see those daily on the freeway. But
Yeah, yeah, we do.
so anyway, I thought, okay, well, let's look at the first phase of somebody's life. The first 6 years, what do children want? They want to be happy, they want to have fun, and they want to learn things. That's
Mhm.
pretty much it. No responsibilities yet, no school.
Right.
Be happy, learn things, and that's pretty much it. And I thought, well, what happens to a child though if something negative comes into play? Because they just want to be happy. They don't want to experience anything negative.
Mhm.
Some children are abandoned. They grow up in orphanages and foster homes. Can't imagine what that would be like. Um, some kids are abused verbally, physically. Some, grow up with an alcoholic parent, or maybe one parent that abuses the other parent. They get to witness that. There's all kinds of things that happen to children, some pretty major, some more minor.
Right.
But anything negative, what happens is they learn to suppress it because they want to get back to feeling happy and joyful as fast as they can. And every time they suppress, they're a little less happy.
Right.
And if it's
Right.
something that's repeated over and over and over, finally they just become not very happy children. And you see it in school. You see it actually during that first 6 years, but most parents think, oh, it's a phase they're going through. They're acting out, they're doing this or that. Well, there's some reason for that. And so, more I looked at that, I thought, well, gosh, what happens when you suppress all of that stuff is you ultimately form a core belief that you have about yourself based on what you've suppressed. There's a lot of kids blame themselves for different things, and they form an opinion of life and whether they're getting the attention they need or the love that they need, or all of those things.
Right. And a lot of those, they come from outside factors. They come from what other people say, they come from what they experience, what they
Mm-hmm.
witness, and they start to just internalize all of that.
Yeah, they do, and what they've learned during that first 6 years, based upon the input they've had from the immediate family or circumstances, then they form a core belief about themselves. They don't know it's going to be about life itself at that point. It's just a core belief that they don't even know they've developed. And we all have it, and it's hidden.
Right.
And nobody ever addresses that. Um, so when I saw that, I thought, I think I've figured out the problem, because every decision you make, it's filtered through the core belief before you take action, and you're already off course before you know it. And a good example, if a child grows up not getting the love and attention that they feel like they deserve, they may grow up and become a victim in an abusive relationship,
Mhm.
desperately seeking love and attention. And there's varying degrees of abusive relationships. Could be a guy or a girl. You see more of the extreme abuse with the woman experiencing the abuse, but some men do. Um, or they may take it out on themselves. Start overeating or over drinking, or gaining weight, or getting into a series of little short-term relationships because they don't feel like they're worthy of being loved. So
And
all
so
of
many
those
times we
things pop
see
up.
we see people get into those kinds of relationships, and they seem to perpetually choose the same type of partner over
Mhm.
and over again because that's
I
what they
always do.
think they're worth.
Yeah, but they don't think they're choosing a good part.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
Oh
when
yeah.
you look
It's
at the abuser and the one seeking love and attention, it's a perfect match. It's a perfect match because the one seeking love and attention they're willing to do anything to get it.
right.
And the one that's the controller, they need somebody like that because the average person's not going to put up with it.
Right.
But somebody seeking love and attention will even put up with being abused. And some, again, there's different degrees of that. But sometimes you can't see almost always you can't see your way out because you're addressing the symptom. And you may think, well, my only way out is to pack up the kids and get my clothes and put in the car. And while he's drunk and passed out, I escape.
Yeah.
But what you're escaping to is another relationship just like it, if it's not being dealt with. And it's so simple to eliminate that unless you're in it. And it's not so simple. And so, anyway, when I looked at that, not just that type of situation, but having every decision filter through your core belief about yourself, that affects every area of your life. So when I looked at that, I thought, okay, what's the solution to that? Well, first of all, you got to help somebody discover what their core belief is.
Right. Right.
And that took me a while to figure that one out. I knew how to ask questions and listen because I'd already started coaching people 5 years prior to that. And this was 35 years ago. There's no way to go research it anywhere. Encyclopedia Britannica, I guess, but that was about it. Um, so it took me a bit, but I was good at asking questions. I thought, I've got to ask questions and listen, which I did, but I've got to start listening to the underlying meaning behind the answer.
Love it.
And that's what took me deeper with people. And then I thought, okay, what's the next step? Well, the next step is what keeps that core belief alive? Because we have millions of files in our brain. I mean, literally millions. And they're all lying there dormant unless somebody activates them.
Right. Hmm.
Somebody asked you a question,
I
John, do
can't
you know
find
how to?
half of mine, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. I asked you, do you know how to change a tire on a car? And you don't think about it. You just instantly search your brain. You go, yeah.
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
get
It's not
these little
something you
pictures
think
in your
about every
mind of the
single
last.
day.
Yeah. And today you'd say, do you know how to change a tire on a car? And you go, yeah, call AAA. I mean, true. Um, so what keeps it alive is the same thing that keeps the positive ones alive, the beautiful things that's happened in your life. You can reminisce about, you know, a beautiful vacation you took, or when you got your driver's license, or you got your first kiss, or you got your first date, or, you always remember those things. You never forget them. I mean, I could see myself driving around one block in the little town I lived in, went to one stop sign, and the guy says, looks like you've been driving for a while, got your license. That was it. I'd been driving one time before I took my license. That was it.
Wow.
and,
I
and, I,
remember
and I
my
didn't know
dad,
what.
my dad took me out for my first lesson in
Yeah.
an old Plymouth Fury 3, 19
Oh,
is
wow.
I guess it was a late 60s model. It was a humongous vehicle. And we got
Yeah.
behind the wheel and he said, "Now remember, son, you've got an 1,800 pounds of killing machine here that you're controlling." And I took my foot right off the gas pedal at that point. I was like, "Oh, okay." Just kind of put things in that mindset, right? And so when you get that little eye-opening revelation, sometimes those are the things that stick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it still
Absolutely.
hits me when I get behind the
Yeah.
wheel, especially when I'm not using my car, but I rent a U-Haul for something. Right? I get behind the wheel of that, and I'm like, okay, I can't drive this like I drive my regular car.
Well, I have six boys and I taught them all. And what I taught them was defensive driving.
Hmm.
I asked one of them that he had a black belt in karate. And I said, how is driving a car like karate? And he said, well, it's not. And I said, well, you get the keys for your first trip here as soon as you answer that question. And he said, well, Dad, it's not like karate. And I said, it is. And he said, well, how is that? And I said, well, tell me what karate is all about. I said, is it about beating people up or what? He said, no, it's about self-defense. I said, how is driving a car like karate? He said, self-defense? I said, yes. I said, all those cars coming at you are like bullets going toward a target, and some of them miss the target. And if they miss the target and you're not being aware of it, it's your fault. I said, you come up to a light, it turns green, and you take off and somebody hits you in the side. I said, whose fault is it? He said, it's their fault. I said, no, it's your fault because you didn't look both ways before you proceeded through that green light. And I said, It's defensive driving. And they've all applied that. Not one of them have had an accident, which is pretty darn good for six
That's
boys.
that's absolutely amazing. So you're
Yeah.
listening to the Cracking the Rich Code podcast, and we are with Jim Britt, the founder of the Cracking the Rich Code. I can only call it a movement, Jim.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
It
it
absolutely is.
is. Yeah, we have some incredible people in our community, almost 400 now, and just an incredible community of such like-minded people that are open, willing to share ideas with people and each other, help each other, do business together. It's just an amazing
And I,
community of
you know,
people.
I don't want to interrupt the whole flow of your background and your story because it's so enriching in and of itself. But I do have to ask you, where did you come up with the idea for the Cracking the Rich Code book series?
Well, the idea came to me about 4.5 years ago when I discovered that most of the people in our industry of helping others live a better life in some way or helping companies, coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs, um, most of them, a good 80 to 90% fail. And I thought that was a pretty sad thing. And granted, there's probably some that's not fully qualified, but I can't judge that. The marketplace will judge it. But there's a lot of great qualified people out there, and they never quite have the market reach that they deserve. And therefore they never develop it into a full-time business. And to me that hurts the world. If I could help somebody extend their market reach, they're going to reach more people that I can never reach, and that's going to make the world a better place. So that was kind of my thought process starting out.
And I'll tell
um,
you, there are some absolutely brilliant, heart-centered and brilliant thinkers in this group. And it seems such a shame that some of those voices, could go silent because they all have such brilliant contributions to make.
yeah, I'm always amazed we get new people in, and the ones that's been around for a long time, at just how brilliant they are. Somebody has a problem they're dealing with, and here's somebody popping up with an answer for them. I'm going, wow, this is such great timing, but a lot of brilliance for sure. Yeah, we're pretty proud of what we have there.
So you created this as a way for folks in our industry to be able to expand their market.
I did. That's exactly what it was created for, and I wanted to put something together that helped them in a lot of different areas: PR, marketing, branding, lead generation, and more importantly, collaboration with top professionals, because that's what most people are missing. Because come into the business as a solopreneur and they talk to themselves, and that's not always healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not bad to talk to yourself sometimes, but be sure you're looking in a mirror when you do it. But it's
Well, the most important part is to be honest with yourself too when you are having those talks.
it's easier when you're looking in the mirror to be honest with yourself too. So
Well,
yeah.
I tell you, the project itself has been absolutely incredible. I've been with you now for a little bit and through a couple of volumes, and the people that I've met throughout this series and with my interaction have been just truly amazing. So, how do you find these folks? Like, how did you find me for crying out loud?
And I have an assistant that just kind of searches around for people, and I don't know where he finds them all. Sometimes it's on LinkedIn, sometimes Facebook, sometimes he might Google executive coach in Dallas or something. I don't know. And he just looks for people and does a little research and says, "Hey, you should contact this person. They may be a good candidate to be a part of the community." And so that's kind of how we do it. Yeah. No rocket science, just simple stuff.
Well, obviously, there's some sort of criteria that you look for people that you want to include.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is, of course, their talent and ability, but also their passion for helping others live a better life. That's what I look for. And when I first started, that was the one thing, and then as we progressed, as you know, everybody's developed a passion for helping one another within the group. So,
Absolutely.
um, but you don't know that going in that it's happened with every single person we have. So that's been a real blessing. But that's really what I look for: their talent, ability. Some people are new starting out. Some people have been around for a long time. Some people have a highly educated and they're using that education to help people. Some have the great experience and background in corporate America or wherever they are, and they bring it into to the private sector. So some people have worked through traumatic circumstances, and now they're helping other people work through that. So just varying types of individuals and experiences and backgrounds.
You mentioned a couple of things specifically like passion and intent. And I think that that goes really far for talking about the kinds of stories and the kinds of advice and the kinds of tips that are in this book series. It's been truly amazing. And at the time of this recording, we're just getting ready for volume 17, right? Is that correct? Is that what's coming out
No,
next?
18. 18.
18.
17's already completed. It's about to be published, and 18, we've already selected about half of the co-authors for volume 18
Wow.
already. Yeah, so it's moving along quickly.
So 18 volumes, that's just absolutely incredible. Did you envision it going on this long, or what was your original thoughts on
You
this?
know, when I first started it, I thought I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't even know if it would work. And I thought, I'll do well. First of all, I thought maybe I'll create a group on LinkedIn or someplace of like-minded professionals, and they can collaborate with one another. Then I started looking at some of the groups on there. I couldn't find any groups that were actually collaborating. I don't know what the groups are for. I mean, maybe they have a purpose. I don't know, but that I ruled that out. And then I woke up one night. I'm thinking, if I could just do something that would make these people feel like they're more like a family. Didn't know what that was until the next morning, and then an idea came to me to do a book with multiple co-authors in it. I thought, now they're in the industry together, and now they're also feel like a family because they're in a book together.
Right.
So I published the first one, and about 30 days later, I put out the word. I said, let's get together on Zoom for 90 minutes. And I said, let's come prepared to tell who you are, what you do, what you're looking for next, and anything that's maybe holding you back. If you want to throw it out there, we'll brainstorm it. That 90 minutes went for 3 hours, maybe a little over. And I had to get off because I had an appointment. I think it would have gone on for another hour. But they all of a sudden they're helping each other. I mean, the first guy that spoke up told what he did, and there was a woman that said, "Hey, if you do what I think you do," she said, "I have a client that is looking for that, but I don't do it." And she said, "Put your info in the chat. I'll call you in the morning, and then if you do what I think you do, I'll refer you." Which she did, and he ended up with a great contract out of it. And somebody else said, "Hey, I want to interview you on my podcast." And somebody else says, "Hey, I've got a podcast too. Why don't we interview each other?" And it's like, so it went on for 90 minutes like that. And I just went, wow, this is working. So I decided to make it a series. And it's really taken off now just in the last 6 or 8 months. I mean, it's really, I think the first 3 years we published about 10 volumes. And then the last 6 months we published about 7 volumes. It just went like crazy, you know.
It's going like yeah, it's going like wildfire. Every time we turn around, you've got another group coming out. Obviously, because you said, we're on 18 and I thought we were still on 17. So
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great project, and I don't see it ending. We'll continue it.
no, there's no and so uh obviously, there's a huge attraction here, first of all, to be affiliated with the incredible Jim Britt, but also, you get Tony Robbins on the cover with these people.
Yeah, well, that when I put it together, I thought about who could I get to endorse the book, who could I get to write the foreword that would have a big name, and I had a couple of friends that were suggesting different people, and I said, well, I think I'll go to Tony Robbins and get him to endorse it, and they laughed at me and said, you'll never get Tony to endorse this, and I said, yeah, I'll have his endorsement in 48 hours, and I had it in 24. But what they didn't know is that Tony and I are friends, and I could get direct to Tony. I didn't have to go through his system, and plus Tony worked for me for about 5 years when Jim Rohn and I were business partners. I hired Tony and trained him, so got a little bit of a history together. The
Just a
only
little.
mistake I made when training him is not taking a percentage of him. You know, yeah. But I never thought Tony would do what he's done. But he did have a lot of passion though back then. I mean, he was very good. He learned quickly. Um, but anyway, and this is the only book in existence that has Tony's endorsement on the front cover of the book. Every other endorsement he's ever done is either inside the book or on the back cover.
Right.
So we're pretty proud of that. And Brian Tracy, a lot of people know Brian. He's been
Right.
around for probably 60 years, presented seminars to over 60 million, 66 million, not 60, 6 million people worldwide, and has written 93 books, and he wrote our foreword. And back then, I think this was the first foreword he has written. And so we're pretty proud of that. I think he's written some since then, but Brian's a great guy. We've been friends since probably 1980 or so.
It's
But
amazing.
yeah, so we wanted to make it, the best we could because new people coming into our industry. I don't care what your experience and background is, unless you have a tribe that you're bringing in or something that you're going to do business with. But the biggest problem is new people don't have credibility,
Right.
and we're trying to help establish that. And on social media, how do you stand out as that key person of influence? Um, it's hard. So this book helps to do that. So we're pretty proud of what we put together.
Well, this is it's an amazing venture, and it's been beneficial to so many of us who have been contributing authors in this series, and really truly love the interaction that we've had with these other. I call them thought leaders, but they're even more than that. I mean, they're
Yeah.
just absolutely amazing folks. And what's great about it is we may all be speakers and coaches. We may all be trying to get the attention of almost the same clients, but at the same time, we're not competing with each other. We're actually out there helping each other. And that's what makes this community so great.
It really does. I mean, I saw a podcast, or not a podcast, a summit that had 12 speakers recently, and I was one of them,
Mhm.
and it was promoted by one of our co-authors. And when I finally got the whole agenda, there was like eight of them were our co-authors of the group. So I started to look at through them and going, I think I recognize most all of these people. So it was pretty cool.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Jim, we're quickly running out of time here, so I wanted to ask you just two big questions. Number one, if somebody is interested in becoming part of the Cracking the Rich Code book series, how do they go about doing that?
Well, you can go to, just email me directly at my Gmail account at jimbrittcompanies@gmail.com.
Companies at gmail.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So they can email me directly and I can send information to them and take a look and we can schedule an appointment and go over your background and, what your passion is and, go from there. Yeah.
Sounds good. And is there anything else that you want people out there to know about Jim Britt or about the Cracking the Rich Code series?
Yeah. We've talked about the people in our series having passion. And I often wondered where passion comes from. And I discovered it probably maybe 30 years ago or so. And it was through a friend of mine. We had always had conversations around books that we'd read. Sometimes we'd read the same books and discuss them and kind of try to take it to the next level or learn from each other's experience from that book. And were doing that one day, and after about an hour on the phone, we hung up. And well, before we hang up, he said, "Hey Jim," he said, "what do you think the word resourceful means?" I said, "Man, I don't know." I said, "Maybe using your imagination or being more productive." I said, I don't know. I said, why? He said, oh, it's just an interesting word. And I said, I guess so. We hung up. That was it. Later that day, I was driving home, and all I could think about was the word resource. I mean, it just rang in my head all the way home.
He
And
planted that, he put that worm in there,
he
didn't
did.
he?
So I get home, and of course, we didn't have the internet then. It was 30 years ago. So I went to the dictionary and looked it up. And the definition was once again full of source. And I thought, that's pretty cool, depending on what you think source means. So I looked up that keyword, source, and I was shocked. It said where all things originate, not some things, but all things originate. And I thought, that's powerful, again, depending on what you think source is. And I kept looking for another definition of it. And I was at the bookstore the next day and I looked up in a book the origin of words and I couldn't find it. And then I looked up another different dictionary, had the same definition. And I was kind of obsessed with it. I don't even know why, for maybe a year and a half. And I was over in the UK, a little town called Chester. And I was walking out on a break we had for about 2 hours of an event that I was presenting. And I see a sign on the back door of a building. It said antique books. And I thought, oh, I love old books, and they probably have older books here than we do have in the U.S. So I wandered in the back door. The first book I see is a dictionary about a foot thick, and it's all tattered and torn and kind of looked like it had been roughly used. And it had a sign that said, do not open. And I thought about it for a minute. I thought, yeah, that's got to be for people in the UK. So I thought, I'll go ahead and open it, but I'll do it carefully.
It
I
doesn't
was
apply to
prepared to buy
me.
it, I think. I don't know what the price was going to be, but I carefully opened it. And I wish I looked at the publication date, but I didn't. Um, and I looked up the word source, and it had some of the same things I'd seen before. And suddenly it was like popped right off the page. It said source defined as love. I went, wow,
Wow.
resourceful is once again full of love. And I kept thinking about that. And I left there, and a few minutes later, I'm walking down the street, once again full of love. I said, how do you apply that to your life or to your business? And I thought, oh, well, when you decide you're going to accomplish something in your life, you fall in love with it. And I thought, that's it. Because the love creates the passion to keep you moving forward. And that's why if some people they just say, well, I'm gonna try this. Well, that's not in love with it. That's going to give it a try. And the word try is defined as to struggle.
Right.
So I'm going to struggle to make this happen. Well, that's not in love with it. So you fall in love with something that creates the passion to move forward. And I thought, wow. I couldn't wait to get back to the event because I wanted to share that, And then suddenly I thought, wait a minute. If all things originate in love, where does fear come from? And I thought about that for a little bit. I thought, that's a flaw.
Did you go on another year journey? No, I'm kidding.
No, I went for about another 5 minutes and it hit me. I thought, where does fear come from? If all things originate in love. And I thought, you fall in love with fear. It's what
Ooh,
we started out on this interview here.
I love it.
That we create something we fall in love with, and then we turn around and create a fear to stop us from getting it based upon the core belief that we've developed about ourselves that we don't know we have. That's why we're so confused about things. We see this, we experience a symptom of what we want to accomplish, or we experience a symptom of what's not working, but we never take it to that next level. Then I left there, flew to Toronto for another event, and was out for a walk there during the break. And I'm walking with the guy that I've read books with, and And we're walking along. I'm 6'4", he's 6'2". We're going pretty fast trying to get back to the hotel because we're running a little late. And this guy is right behind me in step with me that I could see this man following me. Yeah, I'm looking straight ahead. I could see him right here. And he's in step, just walk along, and I could smell his breath, and I could smell him. And I was about to turn around and go, hey, back off a little bit, okay? And I'm walking fast, and suddenly he starts talking in two different voices. And the first voice said, he said, and God created man. And the other voice says, well, I know that. And then he said, yeah, but then God created woman. He said, I know that too. He said, yeah, but then God created fruit. And the other voice says, fruit? What does fruit have to do with anything? He said, well, inside the fruit, there's a seed. And he said, if you plant it, it will grow. And if you don't, it won't. And he turned and went the other direction. I kept thinking about that. And I thought, it's like gardening. Life is that way. If you plant something and you care for it and you love it and you pluck the weeds out and you nourish it, it will grow. And if you don't, it won't. It'll get smothered out by all of the stuff that we have up here or all of the things that grow in your garden without you wanting them to grow. And it's like Jim Rohn used to tell a story. He said a guy walking along and he sees this guy in his garden and he stops for a moment and he said, wow. He said, you and God have a beautiful garden here. He said, yeah, you should have seen it when God had it by himself.
Ooh.
Because it takes both. You know, I hear people say, well, God put me in this position. No, that's not true. You put yourself in that position and you're going to be able to stay there until you decide to move out of that position. And God will support you in either one of those, hardship or
Right.
prosperity, whatever you
Right.
want in your life, you get supported by it. So that's my philosophy anyway. So anyway, I would encourage people, if you decide what you're going to do, fall in love with it. Don't make a half-hearted decision. Make one that's a full decision that doesn't allow for anything less. And you're going to see miracles take place when you do.
I love it. Jim Britt, thank you so much. It's been an honor to chat with you. And this is probably one of the longer conversations that we've had together. And I absolutely have delighted in it. And some really great nuggets of information out here. And fall in love with what you want to do is just a great way to wrap this up. So, Jim
Yes.
Britt, founder of Cracking the Rich Code. What a perfect guest for the Cracking the Rich Code podcast. Thank you so much, Jim.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show.